ladies and gentlemen. This is Somajit Mitro from Chemical Engineering Student Society, NIT Durgapur. Co-hosting with me today is Riddhi Chaudhary, and you're watching a chat with Chess on YouTube. As promised, we are here with the much-awaited placement diaries session on Reliance Industries Limited. Our guest for today is Mr. Souvik Ghosh, currently placed as a graduate engineering trainee in the Special Task Force Division of Reliance Industries Limited. He has served as the training and placement representative for the Department of Chemical Engineering for the batch of 2022, and thus has been a source of huge inspiration and motivation for all of us. Good evening, Bhaiya. Welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Shomajit. Nice to meet you.
So, Bhaiya, we have some questions to ask you. If the permission, we could proceed.
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead.
So, Bhaiya, the first question that I would like to ask is to tell us something about Reliance Industries Limited in general.
Reliance is, they call Reliance the Mecca of chemical engineering. Reliance has a very diverse business in their petrochemical sector, in their energy sector, their retail sector, their textile sector. And Reliance is the 10th largest employer of India. And as you all know, as any chemical engineer knows, Jamnagar is the biggest refinery in the total world. And apart from that, Reliance has ranked most probably around 155th in the Fortune 500 companies list. It has won the International Refiner of the Year award. So Reliance is a known name for any Indian household.
So, Bhaiya, as we know that you're placed as a graduate engineering trainee in the Special Task Force Division. So, I mean, what exactly does the role require? I mean, could you explain to our viewers the responsibilities of the Special Task Force Division and how they contribute to the industry?
Yeah, sure. Actually, as I haven't joined the industry yet, I have a third person's point of view. Okay, the seniors, our
So,
seniors from the 2019 batch or 2020 batch. So those who are in placed in STF generally, as you, I think you have learned about Aspen. So the general, most of the work that is for the STF, that is basically based on Aspen HYSYS or Aspen Plus, and they do the work on optimization of the process, energy optimization, process optimization, heat exchanger planning, piping in the all sector. The main thing is that the STF becomes a process engineer, whereas the general manufacturing students, the general manufacturing students, go on to become the shift engineers, where then the STFs become the process engineers. So basically, it is main funda would be optimizing the process and getting a better result. Energy optimization, I think you have heard about it in your curriculum.
yes, Bhaiya. So, could you tell us the various rounds one has to go through in the selection process of Reliance Industries Limited?
Okay, Reliance actually came to our campus in the end of October. So the first round was an apti plus tech round. It was an online test on the AMCAT platform. And after that, 1 month later, in the start of December, most probably if I'm not wrong, 3rd of December, they had the second round, which was a PI, technical and HR, both combined.
So, as you mentioned, the first round it's a combination of aptitude and technical questions. So, what is the weightage of each section, if you could describe?
So, weightage means like for aptitude, it was an AMCAT based test. So, if you have given any AMCAT based test, you know, like for the technical part, there will be 30 questions that has to be answered in 30 minutes. And there were 30 technical questions that has to be also answered in 30 minutes. So, you can't just skip any question. You have to answer all of the questions. Okay. So,
In the
the question,
aptitude,
yeah, aptitude
the
and technical
aptitude
both.
section has to be completed first, and then we
Yeah, yeah,
can
yeah,
move
yeah,
on.
yeah. First 30 minutes it's for the aptitude section. You can't skip any questions, and the difficulty level is easy to moderate, nothing to be worried about. So and in the Reliance there was a selection criteria that one has to have a 65% throughout number, like 65% calculates to 7 CGPA for our college, and class 10th and 12th 65% and 7 CGPA for our college with no active backlogs. So that was the first stage, and as far as I remember, approx 20 plus students appeared for the first round from chemical, and nine students got selected in the nine or 10 students got for the final round, selected for the final round.
Yeah, one last question there from my side that we are often told that Aspen, ANSYS, these are softwares that we need to learn. Are they required to clear the interview?
Actually, look, Shomajit, the thing is, Reliance has offered two posts, right? Or manufacturing for chemical, I'm saying. In the mechanical, they have offered another post called RPNG. Not talking about that. Reliance has offered two posts for us, manufacturing and the STF. So STF, as I think, but from my perspective, because the two students who got STF was me and Ankita, both had projects based on Aspen. And I mentioned in my interview that I know Aspen. I have told them about my projects, what I did in Aspen, and they asked me about optimization, how would you proceed, and what are the advantages of using it, and all that things. If you mention Aspen in your CV, then only they will ask questions from it. If you don't mention, there is no heart and soul requirement that you have to learn Aspen. That's not. But if you know, it will be a good thing.
Thank you, Bhaiya. I would like to hand over the mic to my junior Riddhi Chaudhary for the remaining questions.
Thank you, Shobhajita. And once again, Bhaiya, welcome and thank you for giving us your time. So, Bhaiya, I'd like to ask that how exactly do we prepare for the first round, like the written test?
Well, it's like for not just Reliance, for any. So one thing I want to mention as a former TPR, two things that are necessary. One is you have to make a proper CV, and by CV, making CV, it's not like you just put your name and some of your details and your numbers, like what you got in graduation and what you got in 10 and 12. That's not how you make a CV. And trust me when I say this, I have seen people making this kind of CVs. So there are many companies which has a criteria of shortlisting on the basis of CV. So you have to make a proper CV first. If you are applying for a core company, mention your core projects. If you are applying for a non-core or software company, mention your projects that you have done in that field. Okay. And as
Right.
for your question, the first round, it was an aptitude plus tech round, as I mentioned. So for the aptitude part, you can consult IndiaWix. That is more than enough for it. If you practice those sets, what I would suggest, there are some, if you open the IndiaWix, there are some test parts. Okay, mock test you can
Right.
give. So give the tests and in that stipulated time, and then analyze what you have done wrong. Give more time to analyzing. So if you practice India Weeks well, I think it's good. You are good enough to clear most of the tests. And for the technical part, technical part questions are very basic about your knowledge in chemical engineering. Some basic questions about distillation, some basic questions about heat exchangers, some basic questions about pumps. So if you are actually hoping to get a job in a core company, so you are supposed to know these things. So just keep it simple, go for the basics, and for aptitude, the practice is the key.
Right. So, Bhaiya, that brings us to our next question. Like, could you share with us what exactly were the questions that you were asked in the technical round? And,
Yeah.
like, are there any specific books that you followed for those, like preparing for all those questions?
Look, for technical part, as I mentioned, when you are applying for a core company, your core basics should be clear. So you can follow any standard textbooks like those our professors recommend. Follow any of that, or you can follow the videos from NPTEL. I have followed, like I remember specifically for fluid mechanics, I followed the videos of NPTEL. And for there are some you don't have to read all the things, right? For let's say when you are mentioning that you have a good command over heat transfer or mass transfer, so there are some specific topics which the interviewer will ask you questions about. Like for example, if you are saying you have your favorite subject is mass transfer, so you are bound to get questions from distillation. Prepare in deep. What is distillation, what is a reboiler, what is a condenser, how it works, what is reflux ratio, what is distillation troubleshooting, etc. Okay. And for heat transfer, there is a thing, I guess you have a course on heat transfer design, heat exchanger design. Okay.
Right, yeah.
uh, I don't know you have read it or not. I guess it is in the third year, fifth or seventh, sixth semester. So so prepare those things well. Design part, I was asked in another interview, tell the steps of designing a uh, heat exchanger, the current method I had to mention. So following standard textbooks is enough, and the specific topics that I mentioned, keep a focus on that. And as for my Reliance interview questions, it was basically the interviewer first asked me about myself. When I mentioned I told about myself, and in the end, I mentioned that I had two favorite subjects of all, that is heat transfer and mass transfer. So the interviewer said, "Oh, you have these two subjects prepared. So let's start with thermodynamics." Okay, so it was like, then the first question he asked me, I had no idea what that was. So I said I don't know. Then he asked me about adiabatic process. Then he asked me about refrigeration cycle. I was, that wasn't my cup of tea. So I just answered it in a jittery way. Okay. Then he said, okay, then let's move on to mass transfer. Provided I told him that I had two strong folds, and he went to that, and and he went on asking some basic questions like, what is in the mass transfer. He first asks, what is like draw a distillation column. Okay, so I drew that, and then he asks, what is flooding, what is channeling, what is dumping, all the terms you would read. You are in second year, right?
Yeah, I just went to third year.
Oh yeah, you will learn it in the third year. What is channeling, what is dumping, what is uh, ch- vaping, and all that. And he told me that in it, why there is what is the benefit of using a tray there? Why not some other things? And those are like concept-based questions. And like he said, what are the forces that are acting in a tray? And then we move to the first mass, and then fluid mechanics part. In the fluid mechanics part, he asked me questions about pump, where to use a reciprocating pump, and where to use a uh, positive displacement pump, what is a shut-off head, and different questions about the dimensionless numbers. What are the correlations? What are the correlations in heat transfer, mass transfer, and momentum transfer? And in the last final part, it went to the heat exchanger part. In the heat transfer, heat exchanger part, he asked me about what is LMTD, how would you, where to use a shell and tube heat exchanger, and where to use a double pipe heat exchanger, what are the various advantages of using that. It was a 40 minutes interview. I have coordinated in various interview events like for chemical, and it was Reliance had the most time consuming interview for 40 minutes for each student. Each chemical student had to go on for like 40-45 minutes, and it was totally a technical interview. HR questions were asked hardly one or two, and total thing was a technical interview. They will ask you about your project, what you have done. If your final year project is not done, then that's not an issue, because you should have done some other projects also, small academic projects, you can mention them. And you have to compulsorily do a internship. So they will ask you about the internship. Make sure you prepare that well, because if they ask you about your internship and you are not able to answer that, that gives a very bad impression.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did my interview from IICHE on petroleum refinery engineering. So I was asked questions about what is the BS6 norms, why there is a regulation on sulfur content, why there is a regulation on aromatic content, about how the how it is changed from the BS4 to BS6, and what are the why, what is the anti-knocking property, what is an octane number, what is the C10 number. So in all that, when you are, as I've said, when you are applying for a core company, make sure your basics are clear, and the internships and the projects you have done, you have a good grasp of it.
Right. So, Bhaiya, so there means there isn't any separate area around. It's totally
No,
merged
no,
with
no, no.
the.
It is a combined round of HR and technical. As I mentioned, they will ask you two or three HR questions. First about yourself, and then what do you know about Reliance. And yeah, one thing I want to mention, like before the 2-3 days before the final interview, they will give you a form. Okay, in the first page, you have to fill in your details, like academic details and all. And in the second page, they had five questions, five HR questions, like what are your strengths and weaknesses, what who is your role model, where do you see yourself in 5 years, and what are your hobbies, and all. Like these five questions, you have to write them and submit the form in that day. Or so there wasn't any cross question about that, but these are the these this was basically the HR part. Like for Reliance, there there was very little weightage on that HR part. So if someone is concerned about HR, then go for Reliance, because they will mainly based on the technical part.
Right. So, Bhaiya, do you think that they look for like any extracurricular skills we should be keeping in mind before appearing for the interview, or just our grasp on the technical should be enough to get us through?
Look, in my interview, the HR person who was there was she was analyzing my behavior. Okay, how I was explaining the things and all. She was analyzing just my body language, and the technical person was doing all the questioning and answer parts. So I don't think like you should be doing some of the extracurricular activities. That's a thing, but for Reliance, I don't think that's a very important thing.
Right. And neither any other skills like software skills, nothing like that.
Well, as I mentioned, when you are applying for an STF position, you should know Aspen.
Right.
And other software skills, look, I personally, I don't have much knowledge of coding, like programming or coding, I don't know at all. If you tell me to write some code about like a simple code of sorting, I can't write that. But in that, when you are applying for the STA position, you should know Aspen, because they will ask you, if you mention it in your CV, they will ask you questions about it. So make sure you mention only the things you know. Suppose you just mentioned that you know C, you know MATLAB, and they ask you some question and you can't answer that. So it will be a mess. So that's why I was saying from the first beginning that prepare a good CV. Don't write unnecessary things. Make sure to write only the things you are good at.
Right. So, Bhaiya, any presentability or overall like body language that you mentioned earlier, we should be keeping in mind? There are some
Look,
tips that you could give
for my
us.
personal experience, I can say I was asked a question about distillation, in which I was asked a question about what is channeling, right? So I was mentioning the person, like when there is a liquid gradient, I was using my hands like this, and so the person there told me that, Souvik, you have a visual, you are visualizing it well, but I'm asking for the specific forces. Okay, so in that moment, it struck in my mind that they are looking at your body language. So I don't, have a positive body language where the interviewers know that you don't know all the questions they will be asking. So if you don't know a question, simply just say that, sir, I don't know. Don't try to give a vague explanation. If you know something about it, let's say they ask you about characteristic length and you know about characteristic diameter. So you can say, sir, I don't remember the exact definition of characteristic length, but I know this is the characteristic diameter. You can do that. But if you don't know anything about something, so just simply say, sir, I don't recall that thing. Don't try to give a vague answer. And they look for you, they know that they are hiring a graduate engineering trainee. So that person won't be knowing all the things. They are giving you a 1 year GET training. Okay. So
Right.
so it's okay to not to know something. Just tell them that I don't know it.
Right. All right, Bhaiya. I believe that's all the questions we had, and that brings us to the end of today's session. And Shobhita, I'd like to thank you once again for having made time out of your busy schedule for us.
Sure, sure, sure.
And Chess would like to keep in touch with you in the future as well, and we hope to see you again
Yeah,
with us
sure,
in the
sure.
future. And as for our viewers, it's a humble request to kindly like and share the video and let us know in the comments down below whether you found the video useful or not. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and definitely press that bell icon to keep yourselves updated with all the latest uploads. Chess promises to get back to you all as soon as possible with more exciting and illuminating content. Until then, goodbye. Chess signing off.